Hey, this is the Game Design Live Chat. I'm Carla. This is Ananda, and we're talking about trick taking or something. The
And
actual. Oh,
we
go on.
also have Matt, was it?
Mm,
I think.
Yep,
yeah.
I'm here.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear you take off the microphone, so I didn't know if you were just listening today.
Yeah.
But,
Yes.
yeah.
So we were just talking about how Bridge is kind of weird and seems like it might have evolved. Well, seems like, I mean, probably this is something that you can verify by looking in wherever board game histories can be looked up. But
Yeah, it did evolve over time. There's some other ones that it grew out of. Whist, Whist, I think, is one of the ancestors of Bridge.
Cool.
yeah. Yeah, and Carla, you were just saying like who would make a game where 1/4 of the players just don't do anything.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's fun if you are not that one player that sits out, or maybe that's how they like put in like the bathroom breaks or something.
Yeah.
But I was like really excited when I found that out that like Bridge has the one player playing like their own hand and like open handed because then there's like a precedence. Like I hate just like making up mechanisms and stuff and being like, okay, let's teach you this whole new thing that you've never heard about. But if I can be like, hey, one player plays with their hand and open handed, just like in Bridge.
Yeah.
Like trick taking. Well, like you've heard of Bridge probably if you're like interested in this game. Like just anything that can be like familiar, like will make it so much easier to explain.
Yeah, it's really handy to be able to rely on player intuitions.
Mm-hmm. Even though like I would have never really thought of that until somebody mentioned it. Like I think it was David where he's like, yeah, in Bridge one player plays open handed. I was like I don't know. I should play more like regular card games like when I need to like fix something in another game just to like see what all the different like uh things that are like normal to like incorporate.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a company called Denexa that sells cards, but they also have a free PDF file with like 500 different card game rules. Additionally, on their website, they have card games from all over the world. I haven't been on the site in a couple of years, but the last one that I saw was one that had been developed in Syria during the latest civil war that they'd had.
Oh.
That's interesting. Oh, and another way to like maybe get like design inspiration that I found out recently. Um Nikki Valens, we were talking and she was telling me what cribbage was, like where she was like designing a game that was based on cribbage. And she described this game and I was like, "Oh, whoa. I have this game idea." So I wrote out a big design doc and then I actually played cribbage, which was completely different than what I thought it was. Like I don't know what I heard because I'm assuming like she explained it pretty well. But since like it was just like cribbage is such a weird game too, like bridge, um, where there's like all these rules and things, and I was like, whoa, this is a cool different game. It's nothing like the one I designed, but um, yeah, just
Yeah.
get somebody to describe a game to you and get inspiration from it, and it could be completely different.
Yeah. I think we might be getting a very faint echo from Nick. Like slight feedback. I'm not sure. I, anyway, I think I think last time I played cribbage I was like 5 and I hated it.
It's really weird.
Yeah, it is pretty weird.
I've been playing a lot of it lately. It's funny you guys should mention it.
So, what do you like about cribbage?
Part of it is all right, so there's two phases. There's the pegging phase where you play cards trying to get to 31 without going over. And part of it there is leading with cards to try and make the other person play something. So that's part of the fun I like there. The other is, coming up with the best hand that I can. It depends on where you are in the game, because sometimes if it's close to the end and you count second, then you want to make as many points as you can during pegging. Otherwise, you might want to stash something away in your crib, or on the turns where you put something in someone else's crib, coming up with something that's going to try and give them the least number of points while maximizing your own. So it's basically just learning how to read the person you're playing against and to try to play cards that you anticipate that they'll play something in response that you have a response for.
Yeah, like I just don't understand, like, going back to what Ananda said about, like, how did these things even happen? Like, the fact that, like, one player has the crib and, like, you alternate who has this crib thing that's going back and forth, and it's like, why is that good? I don't, like, if I saw that in, like, a modern game, I'd be like, well, that's completely, like the first player has a great big advantage because they get the crib first, or whatever it is. But I mean, people like it in cribbage, so I also never like I played against a computer for like an hour or two, and like I won a few times, so like I kind of figured it out. But like I don't, if I tried it again, I wouldn't know what I was doing.
Yeah, I think in practice, getting the crib first doesn't necessarily provide that much of an advantage. Although if you do play more than one game, so you do swap out who has the first crib. But a lot of it really comes down to the cards that you're dealt. Because you might end up having crib first and have a 2-point hand and a 0-point crib. And so, the next person's turn, they get a 14-point hand and a 20-point crib. It just can happen sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But,
go on.
Personally, I've never been able to get into traditional card games. I guess it's just they feel abstract and not very exciting to me.
Yeah, I had a lot of relatives who played them when I was young. So I was playing Rummy and Gin Rummy and other card games when I was, 6, 7, thereabouts. So I guess that made a difference in some ways.
I guess, yeah, I do like Racing Demons, and I did grow up playing that. So, yeah, maybe there's sort of a nostalgia factor to it.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody likes to play 52 pickup once.
That's the worst game. But yeah, I'm like Matt, where like my family grew up and we played Rummy and poker and all those card games a lot. So that's where I got started with games. So now like some of my favorite games are card games, but they're like just like simple twists on things. But I've never actually been able to design like a small card game. The smallest card game I've designed was like 100 and some cards, so that's not small.
Well, but are they different cards, or like are they copies of?
They're copies, but like you need that large of a deck. It's also like a different sort of card game. Like I'd love to design like a game that just had like suits and numbers, like and a rule set of some sort. But yeah, that is not how my design brain works.
I have one that I've worked on that is loosely based on a game called Crates, which it's a bit chaotic. It was devised by the Chicago Bridge Club, bringing bridge back into it. back in 1970. And they would play it while they were waiting on the next round to start, while they're just sitting around. And the thing about crates is you can't tell anybody the rules.
Oh, it's
They
one
have
of
to learn
those.
by watching. Yeah, and I didn't do that, but some of the things like the previous player or the next -1 player discards or does other things like that, I kept in. But yeah, it adds an element of chaos and such. And finding, for me, I like studying a lot of games that have been around for a while and try and figure out what makes them work and why they've been popular.
I mean, a big factor often I think is just that tradition, like Monopoly, for example. People grow up playing it, and then if they don't discover other games, they teach it to their children. That's how a lot of I'm not saying that all old games are bad, but it's how a lot of games survive.
Mm-hmm. I mean, because you have to do something as a family. Probably. I guess now we have like iPads and stuff, so everyone can do their own thing.
Right. Yeah.
But so the topic that was supposed to be for today was like common problems and your favorite fixes. Do you want to talk about that?
I have one. I wrote a blog post on it recently, actually. So it's in Dungeon Rancher, which is the game that I'm working on right now. And the game has some other issues, but this one's interesting because so the problem that I was trying to fix was a pretty minor procedural thing. Basically, monsters have a level, and we're representing the level with a die that you put on the monster card. So, like, if it's a level 3 monster, the die is turned to a 3. And one of the playtesters said, well, okay, this is easy enough to do in TTS because you can just press 3. But in real life, it's pretty tedious to have to, turn the die to the right face, which is true. That's not something you want in real life. And honestly, the die was just sort of a placeholder. We weren't actually intending on using the die in the real game. There'd be like tokens or something that you could put to indicate the current level of the monster. But I got to thinking, well, okay, so how can I make this make the process of leveling up the monster smoother? Just using dice, because you don't really want to introduce another token. And what I came up with actually sort of became the heart of the heart of the new iteration of the game. So basically, the way it works now is the level of a monster is equal to the number of dice on the card. And when you want to level it up, you have to add a die that is at least as high as the highest die on the card. It's like if the monster has 3 1s and a 5, you have to put a 5 or a 6 on it to level it up. And if you don't level it up, it rampages and destroys part of your dungeon. So this actually led to some really cool consequences. Like before, how it worked was you had to, spend a die that was at least equal to the current level. And what players were doing was they were putting the die that they were spending by the monster to remember that they tended to it. So that was a very natural thing players did. So I had to figure, okay, what if they put it on the monster, but then they don't ever remove it? Which is sort of how this came up. But so what the really cool thing this lets you do is now players have abilities that let them reroll dice on monsters to try to reduce the difficulty of tending to that monster in the future. Like you have 3 1s and a 5. Okay, you can use one of your precious rerolls on the 5 in the hopes that it'll become something lower. So there's sort of a really strong feeling of you're sort of training your monsters, and I mean thematically the idea is once you feed them like a level 6 steak or something, they can't go back. They have to have the highest quality food now, or they'll rampage, unless you discipline them. So basically, I fixed a very small problem that wasn't even really supposed to be a problem. Like it was something that we would have fixed later on. And as a result, I've got this really cool mechanic that is really integral to the game.
Yeah, that does sound really cool. And it sounds like really thematic, which is nice.
It worked out really nicely.
Do you have any problems or anything that you're working on, Matt?
Yeah, I have a perennial problem. I start out with too much,
Mm-hmm.
and I have this vision in my head, and it is, in Technicolor, in 4K, it is beautiful, and it is gorgeous, and it's so bloody detailed that it's not playable. So I find the main lesson for me is, and I can say it in two ways. One, an allusion to Frozen, that I just need to, however much I want it, let it go. And then also too, from the author of The Little Prince, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but the gist of it is that true beauty is achieved not when there's anything left to add, but when there's nothing left to remove. But
Yeah.
that said, I want to put together a blog post or something like that of everything I learned about game or know about game design I learned from Disney musicals.
I mean, that is a good way to make it memorable.
That's a good
Yes.
title.
Yeah. So, and of course, Let It Go will be in there,
Yeah.
just because.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I've found is the things that I think are most interesting going in to design are often not the things that end up being most interesting. I had to let something go in Dungeon Rancher. There was a mining mechanic I was super excited about, but it added a lot of time to the game and felt really swingy. So we axed it. And I feel fine because the game is more fun now, even though it was like a super exciting mechanic for me.
Yeah, I think going along with that for me, there's okay, what is my focus? What is the key to the game? And does this particular mechanic or this feature add to it? Or just does it muddy the waters?
Yeah.
Even if it is a fun mechanic.
It's really hard sometimes because like this is one of my biggest issues as well, where like I think something is really cool and it makes it so much more fun, or like it adds like another layer. But like, does the game actually need that extra layer? Probably not. But it's really hard to figure it out. But one thing that I do to make it like more okay for me is that I just make things expansions. So like basically every game I have, like while I'm developing it, I also somehow just have like 2 or 3 other expansions because like I have these ideas and they're cool and I like them, but like I also want it to be accessible and not like so much math for like a new player. I think like I just keep on like adding more and more things because like once I get comfortable with it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is easy. Like black goes next to white, orange goes next to all the colors. Like I just get and I understand everything because I made the game. So that's why I add on like 10 more rules just to, I don't know, occupy my mind or something.
Is that why games come out like on Kickstarter and they have an expansion already, and like it's you can get the special deal where you get the game and the expansion right off the bat?
So I think that's part of it, or at least it is for me because like I might as well like do extra stuff, and it's also like the whole upselling thing. Like if somebody already is like you get them like attracted to whatever the game, and it's $29.99, And then you're like, for only $10 more, you can get this other thing. And getting like the $10 more is really nice.
Or to look at it another way, like it's price discrimination. Maybe someone's willing to pay for the base set, but they're not willing to pay for the base set plus the expansion. So you can get a customer that you wouldn't have got if you bundled them together.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's definitely like that because like the lower initial price value can definitely like get people in. Because like if I had said like, oh yeah, this is a $39 game, that would be way out of somebody else's price point. But like 29 is fine. Like that same person that would be like, no, it's 39, that's too expensive, might be like, oh, it's 29 and I'll add on the expansion because I'm getting two things. Like even though it's the same price, it's like it's different. Like human nature is so weird with that.
Yeah.
I mean,
I always saw, well, I guess not always, but I used to see expansions as sort of a way to get out content that you didn't have time to get to designing in the first game, or maybe that you came up with afterward. But I get the feeling that now it's more about, dividing things up into different parts so that you can make sure that all your customers are buying what they want to.
mm-hmm. Well, I know like some expansions are definitely like to fix issues that have come up like after the fact, like there wasn't enough playtesting done, so there's this expansion that fixes everything and rebalances things, and now it's actually fun. Like with Machikoro, like when I was like interested in getting that one, like everyone was like, oh yeah, get this fish expansion, it makes it good, like you need to get this expansion, this specific one. So yeah, I know like some games do that.
Yeah.
So any other issues or things that you like to do? In like almost all of my games, I end up having hidden objectives, which just like, well, it solves like a couple problems. Like one, if you have a hidden objective, then you have a direction to go into, and you also never know who's winning. So like people are generally just happier. So yeah.
Yeah. They're useful. I don't think I use hidden objectives at all in my games. Um, I, I see them mostly as a way to give players direction from the beginning. In which case, they could be hidden or they could be public. They don't necessarily need to be hidden. Hiddenness is useful for hiding the scores. I guess thinking about it, I guess maybe I tend to have players' choices open up sort of short-term temporary objectives. Like in Weavers, which is a card game about spellcasting. Each spell has a series of steps you have to carry out. There are 5 different steps, but if you carry out a step, it applies to any spells you're currently working on. So like if you it's like if you have 2 spells that both need a gesture, you just need to execute one gesture and it satisfies both of them. But basically each spell you play, so the spells you play have the resources you need to satisfy the other spells. And each spell you play comes along with a little mini goal where if you complete all the steps on the spell, you get this reward. So it's like, okay, I need to play this spell to satisfy this requirement in this other spell. But now the spell I just played also has requirements. So if I satisfy those, I get another reward. And it's just like all these little goals piling up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like trying to be more efficient is always nice. And it makes players feel good, so.
Yeah, that's basically the whole value proposition of the game. It's about being an efficient spellcaster.
It's so exciting. I really like being efficient though. Is that the same as that? It was like a farming game. Did it morph into the
Yes.
spellcasters?
Other way around. The farming game mechanics were inspired by Weavers. The farming game came later. It just added a spatial component because you also had to have the different things you were growing next to each other to benefit. Which turned out to be too much. I think if you want something like that, you have to keep it just to the temporal considerations. Yeah, people can handle space and they can handle time, but handling both is kind of difficult.
Yeah. Spatial things are actually like what I've been trying to like incorporate in most of my games lately. I think maybe because spatial is like so hard to master at the same time as doing something else.
Well, the thing I really like about games with a strong spatial component is just the amount of variation. Like if your game has a couple of cards, the decisions that you're making are very binary. It's like play a card, don't play a card. Okay. But a spatial game, it's like how you're arranging things. There are so many different ways you can arrange things. And often the differences between those ways can be very intuitive. So like you can get a lot of choices but without a lot of paralysis, because your mind you can use the machinery that the brain has to parse spatial relations to handle a lot of the thinking automatically for you. Whereas if what you're dealing with are these abstract abilities on cards, it takes a lot longer to figure out what the optimum use of those abilities is, because we don't have that spatial machinery built in. I like word games for a similar reason, because we have this built-in module for processing language, which means you can have like hundreds and hundreds of different options depending on the letters you have, and you can recognize the choices very quickly because your brain interprets them as words.
Yeah, it's like that whole thing where like as long as the first letter and the last letter are correct, like your brain like normally can figure out what like a misspelled word is.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Games that rely heavily on having lots of different effects that players are choosing from, I think have a high barrier to entry and are prone to AP. I think the ideal spot is to rely on basically anything the brain's really good at doing fast, and then make the rules, the rest of the rules and any different abilities you have as simple as possible. Ideally with no text.
Yeah. That reminded me of another problem I had where like it wasn't like super apparent that the problem was AP, but like sometimes like a player would have like a lot of AP on their turn. And the solution to that was like in that game, players could do 3 things on their turn, like just whatever 3 things they wanted. But we went down to 1 thing per turn, and just everything just became so much easier because instead of like choosing like, okay, well, if I can do A, B, and C, do I do it A, B, C, or do I do it C, B, A? Like, does it matter? Like having to think about all that, but like being able to think like 1 minor step in a direction, and then having like the downtime to like think about the next one, like just fixed it so easily.
That's a good point. Yeah, one thing I've started. Oh, sorry. Were you saying something?
I was going to comment that sounds a lot like analysis paralysis.
Oh yeah,
where you have so many options, you just get stuck. What do I do next?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it fixed the analysis paralysis problem. Well, and it fixed like everything in general, like, or it just made everything better because even the people that didn't have issues, that were kind of fast at it, like, they got even faster just doing 1 action at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one thing I've started doing lately, which I mean is, it's not like it's a brilliant breakthrough or anything, but I've started timing the specific, like both the rounds, but early on also the specific phases of each round to figure out where most of the time goes. I see it like a cost. What's the term? Like a well, okay. Basically, each phase of the game has a cost in terms of the amount of time it takes up. And time is a good proxy for uh, like how. Well, generally, if something takes more time, it doesn't necessarily mean people are having more fun. So time is a good proxy for things that are dragging down not just how long the game takes, but how fun it is. Like diluting the fun to time ratio. And that helped me a lot. It helped me identify the parts of like it helped me identify that in Dungeon Rancher the mining phase was a huge problem, even though I love the mechanic. And deciding that okay, I have to get rid of this. Um, I think it's a helpful way to analyze games, just like literally see how long each part takes, which is more difficult which may be more difficult for some games depending on how they're structured. Like if you can break down the mechanics into specific phases, then it's pretty easy to measure how long each phase takes. But if everything is mixed together and interspersed, then it might be a lot more difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely like that idea though, because I also agree like on the time per fun ratio. Like there's a lot of games that I enjoy playing, but like I just don't play because they're too long for the amount of fun I get from it.
Yeah.
Where it's like, why is this game 10 rounds? It could be 5 rounds, and then I could play it twice, and I'd have twice as much fun. Because I could try out a different strategy or something like that. So I really like the idea of like timing the different phases if there's like actual different phases.
Yeah, it's hard to measure fun, but it's easy to measure time.
Mm-hmm.
You could even compare that to asking your playtesters how long they thought it took, and you can get almost a mathematical score for how fun the game is.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like I tend to like ask like I record like the full game time, and then like if I like so say it took like 60 minutes to play, if they say that they thought it felt like 90 minutes, then like that's really bad. But if they say that they thought that it was like 45 minutes, then that's really good. Like if they think that the time is shorter, then they had more fun than they realized.
I used to do that. The reason I've stopped doing that isn't because I think it's a bad idea, but it's because these days I try to make sure that my games are cut off at a certain point, so that I don't want to waste anyone's time. And that means, well, if it's cut off early, then the playtesters don't know like how it's not useful. And if it's cut off late, well, they knew that I set this as the target time, so that's going to bias their responses. I still like the question, I just haven't had occasion to use it lately.
Yeah, I think like knowing when to cut off a playtest is really important. Like there's a lot of designers that just like want to play the entire game through for like no real reason. I guess to get to the end, but like I
They
wish
feel like they're
like
supposed to.
yeah. So like I've been trying to be more like open with like, oh yeah, have we all gotten the feel for this game already? Like is every round after this the same? Like we've experienced 3 rounds and you want to go to 10? But do we have feedback now? Because yeah, like it's not worth it to spend like an extra, even like a half an hour doing the same thing. It's not going to change my feedback.
Yeah. Plus, if the game is running over its target length, there are clearly some priority issues you need to address. And by that point, you probably have enough information to identify what's dragging it down, and that takes priority over any other feedback they have to give.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any advice for a playtester on how to realize something has gone too long and to facilitate the end.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the awkward part, because if you're a playtester, saying this is this is taking too long, I want it to end, might be it's difficult, because you're not really in a position of authority over the game, right? Whoever's running the game is, unless it's a blind playtest, in which case you can do it. Um, I think there's sort of a social barrier there, maybe. I'm just wanting to be polite.
Yeah, it's definitely there. Like, I experienced that like a couple nights ago, where it was just like, whoa, like we've been giving feedback for like a really long time. Like, we should just like end this. But like knowing like the right time to be like, oh yeah, okay, like any final feedback now, like taking control from like a designer that is perfectly happy to go like keep talking about his game for another 3 hours. Um, so
Yeah,
it's definitely hard.
I, I think it falls to whoever's running the playtest, really. I think it's important that they be aware of time constraints.
And it's even important for somebody who's running a playtest night or a playtest network. Um, just from experience, if it does go too long, some playtesters may not be interested in coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because like if it's not a good playtest experience, they won't come back. So you have to make it like super nice for the playtesters. So like setting like rules and stuff, like okay, if you don't feel like you're adding anything to the playtest, like it's perfectly okay to like say so, like or to say like that you think the playtest, like you have enough like experience with the game to give feedback now, like being really open with like this is okay to do.
Yeah.
I think another thing I learned recently about playtesting is like I should never like go around the table, like and force people to like talk in order. Like, well, it's always important to like ask a question, like Ananda, like if you're not talking or something, like I usually like go like, oh yeah, hey Nanda, like what do you think about this? Um, but like I was recently in a different playtest where the designer was like, here's 10 questions you can answer if you want to, starting with Carla. Just go around. And it was like, whoa.
Wait, like asking each person the 10 questions separately?
Just having them,
Oh,
answer them.
I like asking questions, but I generally put each one to the whole table at once.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a way better way to do it, because like if somebody has thoughts, they'll speak them out. But like, or like if you like specifically ask them if they have thoughts. But if you like force them to talk, you could just force them to like be polite or say something they don't want to say, because that's social conventions. Like, oh, if everyone has to talk, then I have to say something. I'll fill the time and waste everyone's like no.
It's sort of like using what's that psychological thing, diffusion of responsibility. But like you know what I'm talking about, like if there's an emergency, you're supposed to ask one specific person to call 911, because otherwise everyone will think, oh, maybe someone else will do it. It's like using that, but using it to your advantage. Like you're using the diffusion of social responsibility to make sure that you're filtering out any answers that aren't necessarily, I guess, not sincere, but like not strongly held. So people will only be responding if they have a strong opinion about it.
Yeah. And I think like the strong opinions are the ones that matter. Like if somebody doesn't care one way or another, then like it's not like writing everything down and treating every like thought as equal, even though like some people are like, oh yeah, I'm just talking to say words, versus like I really actually feel this way. Like knowing that is very important.
So where's the line between somebody not caring or a part of the game that doesn't elicit any feedback? Is that bad for your game? Should it be eliciting positive feedback?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be. It depends on like what questions you're asking. Like if you're like just saying open ended, like, hey, tell me your general thoughts, like anything positive or negative to talk about, like. That's different than like asking, like not having an answer to a specific question, which is like, what's the worst thing in the game? Like if nobody has like an answer to that, it could be another thing, or it could be just like people don't feel like comfortable talking, like especially with that one, like with what's the worst thing about the game. I always try to like say something that was bad, like, what did you think the worst thing of the game was? Like, was it the really long downtime? Was it the confusing wording on the cards? Or was it something else? Like, just saying something bad about my own game makes it, like, more okay for somebody else to say something bad about the game.
And that could also be, the choice of words that you're using. Like, saying, what is the worst thing? If you reframe it with something like, if you could change one thing, what would it be? That makes it more active, I think, and it also, puts it in a different tone of voice and a different sense of, okay, let's work together to make this game better, as opposed to, all right, here's your chance to just step all over it.
Mm-hmm. And even though like they're basically saying the same thing, like people will respond in completely different ways just because of different like levels of politeness.
Mm-hmm.
So anything else that people have learned lately?
Yeah. I actually had a good experience recently with rubber ducking.
Oh, rubber.
Yes, rubber ducking. Rubber ducking is where you work through the solution for a problem by, you can either talk to a rubber duck or treat somebody else as a rubber duck. And they sit there and they listen. And in the process of explaining the problem, a lot of times you'll gain insight towards a solution for it. And
Why would you be treating a person as a rubber duck as opposed to like a person? I mean, isn't the idea you're treating the rubber duck as a person?
Well, yeah, that's kind of the idea, but like for some people, they can't like explain it. Like, the whole rubber duck thing came up because like so many people are like, oh yeah, I have a problem. Here it is. Oh, after explaining the entire problem, they just know the answer to it. So like they kind of wasted that person's time. So instead, like if you just think of the rubber duck as a person, then you don't waste anyone's time. But
yeah,
some people are still not great about I don't know, caring about other people's time, I guess.
well, and if you approach it from asking somebody, hey, will you be a rubber duck for me? That opens it up so that after you've explained it, then they can ask some targeted questions if they want. But a lot of times, just in the process of explaining something, like you said, the answer will become self-evident. Um,
You said you've been having some success with this lately.
oh yeah, I did. Was talking through a mechanic that I had put in that worked, but it seemed janky. And what we ended up doing was cranking it up to 11. And basically, rather than it being a turn or a hand ending thing, it ended up being, okay, you've won the world. You've made yourself so popular, and so you win the game. But it's a shoot for the moon type of thing that the likelihood of somebody getting to it is not very high, but it seems to fit the theme and everything else much better. course, have to play test it, but that's another issue.
Yeah. I have to play test so many things. But
Play test all the things.
I know, like right now my life is like playtesting 4 to 5 days a week. So that's what I do.
How are you keeping from burnout?
Oh, that doesn't sound.
Well, I have to make sure not to playtest like a long period of time each day, and also like I have a lot of ways that make the playtesting really easy and like the iterating easy. Like I always make notes like after I playtest and discuss with whoever I'm discussing about the game, I make like the like goal like okay, what are all the things that need to get done before the next playtest? What's the goal of the next playtest? What questions need to be answered in the next playtest? Um, so that makes it really easy. So like when I go to playtest again, I'm just all prepared and I know exactly where I need to do and what I need to do and like how to set it up. Because a lot of it is also like organizing. Like for one my Pacific game, like I want to test out like specific player counts and specific things about the specific player counts. So I need to know ahead of time like exactly how many players I need and like what kind of players I need. So just making it like super easy by like writing it down and not assuming that I'll just remember is a big part of it.
That makes sense. And also having a focus for, okay, today I'm going to test this in this game type thing, I think would help too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it also helps to have like I've really liked working with a lot of different co-designers. Like each night I do it with somebody else. So like sometimes they handle some things and sometimes like if I just can't like do it like this week for Wicked and Wise playtesting, I was like, hey, I playtested for like 7 hours yesterday because I was dumb and I thought that 7 hours of playtesting was a good idea. Can somebody else take this over? And they did, so it was fine. Like, it's really nice to have like somebody else like to be there to like take over or to do things. If I ever get to the point of like, I just can't. Because like I don't want to like force myself to do something I don't want to. Like I always want to like enjoy the playtest and enjoy the process. Otherwise, like if you start not enjoying it, then it just gets so much worse.
That makes sense.
But yeah, co-designing, that's what I started it like not even a year ago, but I love it now. Like it's now like I don't ever want to really design a game by myself anymore.
It's nice to have other perspectives.
Yeah, and like just somebody else to do something, or like if I get to the point where I'm like, okay, I can do A or B, and I don't care either way.
Yeah.
Can you make a decision?
Yeah, I have a co-designer on Dungeon Rancher, which is the first game since Lucid that I've co-designed. Lucid was a game I worked on a couple years back. And yeah, basically I have him design most of the different cards, like the rooms and stuff. Because I'm more interested in mechanics than content. And it's great. Yeah.
It's really nice to find somebody else that cares about the things that you don't care about.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I have another problem-solving anecdote from Icewords this time. So Icewords is the computer game adaptation of a board game about wrestling, but Icewords isn't about wrestling. It's about a penguin fighting winter creatures on an iceberg. And one problem I was having was there's this mechanic in the wrestling board game version where it involves moving around a board by spelling words out of the letters on the board. And as you're moving around, you're pushing and throwing your opponents around. And in the board game version, you couldn't push your opponent onto part of your path because, well, for one thing, if you could, then it would be, well, depending on how you handled it, it would be easy to just push them all the way off the board. And for another thing, if you push them onto your path, you're blocking your path, so you can't move there. And so in the computer game version, a problem I was having was this wasn't intuitive to players, that you can't put an enemy onto your path. And so I was thinking of different ways to solve it, and then I realized that the limitations I'd had in the board game no longer applied because it's single player. It's like it's okay that you can put a monster onto your path and then just push them off the board, because it's a single player game. Like, the who's going to get angry? I mean, the monster, but they're dead, so they don't matter. So yeah, just sort of. I had this multiplayer mindset that was limiting me, and then when I reframed it, it's a single player game. It doesn't matter if it's unfair to the monsters. I was able to solve the problem in an intuitive way.
That makes a lot of sense. Just like reframing it.
Yeah. Yeah, we're working on multiplayer board games. There are a lot of things you have to consider very differently from single player games.
Yeah. Well, like in making sure it's like simple and not complicated enough. Like I've been doing a lot of solo design lately, and it's definitely like a whole different mindset. Or like, I don't know, I just like in one of my games that I'm making solo, it's just making it like as easy as possible, because like if I think that it's too hard to do, that means that somebody else that hasn't played it and doesn't know it that well, like, will definitely have issues with it. So like it has to be like a lot more simple than I think it is. So
Is it okay to jump in?
Oh,
Sure.
yes. Oh,
I wasn't sure if they were supposed to be in my first time. Anyway, wasn't sure of the social rules there. I'm very, very new at designing solo. You're talking about solo modes or designing alone?
I was talking solo modes.
Okay, me too. I just wanted to clarify. It's my first time designing a solo mode, and I was never really a solo player. So it's kind of been difficult to figure out how to go about like even starting that. Of course, I watch a bunch of playthroughs and stuff and kind of get a general gist, but since I was never a solo player, it's been a very interesting struggle to design an interesting solo mode. And then since I am the best player in the world at my game, it ends up being a little too difficult for people, kind of like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of working through that myself right now.
Yeah. I'm at the same place where like I've not played like any games solo other than my own. Like I've played like a few, but like that's not why I play board games.
Right.
I might play them solo like as apps or something like that. But yeah, I think like if you need more like things to go off of than doing apps, helps out a lot. But I don't know. I don't think it's like that much of an issue to not like super enjoy solo modes when you are creating a solo mode. If you can at least like for me, I think like I tend to do like different things, and like people that like really like solo modes and just do the things that I've seen before. Like I'll just have way crazier ideas because like I don't know what is in like a lot of solo games, so I just do whatever and it works out.
Maybe that's a good thing because you're thinking outside the box because you're not in the box.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's interesting and a really good thing for the players.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I also have usually different difficulties where I always play the game at like medium or above, and like I make sure like the medium I can win fairly easily. But that means that other players, when they start playing the game, like medium will be hard and easy like might still be hard. Just because
That
like
makes sense.
I'm like you, where like I know the game, like to make a solo mode I have to play the game a certain number of times and like fully
Yeah.
understand like everything and how they work together, and just to be good at it. So yeah, but that's like an easy fix of how can we make this slightly easier? Okay, that's the
Yeah.
easy mode.
Yeah, I did some playtesting around easy and hard modes. And there was a surprising amount of debate over the terminology used. It's like easy makes it sound like if that's difficult for you, then you're like stupid or bad at the game or something. And so so I ended up choosing different terminology at the time that I was doing it and going like beginner, intermediate, and advanced, so that like it's obvious that if you're new to the game, this is where you should start, not because you're bad at games or stupid, but because you've never played this game before. So there was a terminology issue there for a while.
Yeah, I think most people that play solo games like know that they're going to be kind of hard. Because like if
Yeah.
you play a solo game and you just like win it, like will you play that game again? Like,
Right.
do you want the game to be easy to just win? Like a lot of solo players, like they want like some sort of challenge. Like they don't want to have mastered it on the first time. They want to like explore and do different things.
That makes total sense. I guess I don't really know the solo player base very well and what they want and their expectations, so maybe it's not an issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, usually solo games should be hard. Well, like it's like co-op games where like in a co-op game, well, depending on who it's aimed for, like you shouldn't have a success rate of more than 50%.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it might be a little less. I think the challenge. I mean, I agree that challenge is still important for co-op games, but in co-op games you also have sort of the feeling of camaraderie and working together, which is a big plus to the game. So I feel like even I think it's possible to have solo games where people win, or sorry, not solo, co-op games where people win more than they would in a solo game, and still have it be appealing because of the togetherness of it. Whereas in a solo game, it's just you versus the game, so there's, there's nothing else. There's no other appeal besides that. Like especially super casual games like Just One, for example. I mean, that game it's well, it has different levels of victory, but it's not that hard to win, but it's sort of a party game. So, there's it has other appeal besides just the difficulty.
Yeah, I think for difficulty levels and like win rates, the winning has to like matter. Like for Just One, like as you said, it's a party game. Like the winning isn't like what the game is about.
Right.
Like there's not really a way to lose. It's just like various shades of winning and like when you stop playing. Like well, a lot of party games it's like we play until we want to stop, not when the game tells us to stop. At least in my experience.
Yeah, scoring in party games is always an interesting thing. Most people don't care. Some people do.
People that care about scoring are very confusing. Like sometimes like I make sure to get feedback about a game before I tell people like what scores and stuff that they got, just because like their feedback will change so much depending on if they know whether they won or lost, and like I don't want their like feedback to be like tainted by, oh yeah, you lost by 2 points, and then they're like, oh yeah, everything is terrible, whereas if they won by 2 points they'd be like so happy about the game. So
That's interesting.
people are weird. But anyway, it's 3:00 now. Does anyone have anything else they want to talk about? Is this good? Okay. Well, thank you both for coming, and Matt, even though he's gone. And we're doing the sell sheet feedback next weekend. If anyone wants to sign up. So it was great talking to y'all.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for doing this. That was fun to listen to.
Yeah. Oh, and next time, I guess I didn't notice that you were just listening or whatever, but you can talk.
Oh,
up
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, okay. I didn't want to intrude.